Well, the arrangement in New Delhi means that fully vaccinated travellers will be able to fly into Singapore from 3 Indian cities and skip quarantine. But as Asian Guard reports, concerns over Omicron may see new restrictions being imposed.
As India and Singapore ease international travel restrictions, many are welcoming quarantine-free travel to Singapore. Before the pandemic upended international travel, thousands of tourists and expatriates traveled both to and from these nations every year, making VTL a highly lucrative program for those with families, friends, and business interests in both India and Singapore. Those visiting Singapore will have to undergo 2 COVID-19 tests and must also have health insurance with a minimum coverage of 30,000 Singapore dollars. But once flying the other way around, may be subjected to much harsher restrictions that come into effect from December 1st. Singapore is one of the 12 countries believed to be at risk from Omicron, feared to be more dangerous than the Delta variant. So authorities say travellers from at-risk nations may be subjected to rigorous testing and screening upon arrival. If the travellers test negative for COVID-19, they will have to be placed under home quarantine for 7 days as a preventive measure. And if found positive, they will have to be put under institutional quarantine for a period of 14 days. And concerns are that the new measures intended to tackle Omicron could disrupt the new VTL program within days of its inception. It is unclear if the new quarantine rules apply to VTL travellers, but the news of international travel halting has sparked an intense debate in the country. With millions of Indians still unvaccinated, it may be that the risks of reopening international travel may outweigh the benefits of it. And that could be a huge disaster for the country's travel and tourism industry. Ishan Garg, CNA, New Delhi.
The last time Tanya saw her parents in Singapore was in February 2020. The 37-year-old Singaporean who lives in Jakarta with her Indonesian husband and 2 children was not able to visit home because of the mandatory quarantine. Tanya was emotional when news broke out about the VTL arrangement.
The first thing that came to my mind was I could finally see my parents. So I literally broke down in tears. It was starting to really put a strain on relationships as well, not knowing when I can see family and friends back home in Singapore. So elation, relief, just genuinely very, very happy. Just happy to be able to travel without that quarantine period in Singapore.
Under the VTL scheme, travellers need to be fully vaccinated and test negative for COVID-19 2 days before departure for Singapore as well as upon arrival. The arrangement is one way, only letting visitors from Indonesia into Singapore without quarantine. Indonesia remains closed to Singapore travellers. Travellers from Indonesia who want to visit Singapore without going through quarantine need to apply for a vaccinated travel pass via the Safe Travel portal. Applications for the pass began on 22nd November, and by the end of the first day, more than 2,600 travellers have been approved to enter Singapore under the VTL scheme. Adrian, who is an Indonesian citizen, does not need to apply for a vaccinated travel pass because he's also a Singaporean permanent resident. However, the 45-year-old sustainability executive still needs to take a designated VTL flight to enjoy the quarantine-free travel to Singapore. Currently, there are only 2 VTL flights between Jakarta and Singapore.
The challenges obviously is that there's a specific flight that we have to get in and the preparations to get that specific flight, because there's not all flights are VTL flights. In the future, obviously I would like to see more often flights, the frequency of flights are getting better. Because for people like me that do businesses in both countries, the ease of traveling will be very important.
Trading company PT Technology Bintang Emas plans to bring about 400 of its members for a trip to Singapore. But the company may hold off the plan because of conditions requiring visitors to Singapore under the VTL to purchase travel insurance with a minimum coverage of $30,000 against COVID-19 related medical charges.
Tentunya dengan peraturan yang berlaku saat ini, kami sangat senang, tetapi members yang ada itu agak sedikit keberatan. Kenapa mereka keberatan? Karena memang mayoriti members kita di Indonesia belum terlalu insurance minded.
Indonesia was one of Changi Airport's top 3 markets pre-pandemic, accounting for about 12% of Singapore's tourism receipts.
We do not expect a major uptick in inbound arrivals from Indonesia in the very immediate term because, of course, we understand there could be certain capacity constraints. But we are building our activities to target the Lebaran or the Hari Raya travel peak. Typically for Indonesia, that's always the May-June period.
Despite the complicated health protocols involved as compared to before the pandemic, many travelers are determined to go through the process to unite with family members. Saiful Bahri Ismail, CNA, Jakarta.